Welcome to the Rainbow Six Canada National Stage 2 recap show, where today we're going to analyze the highest highs and lowest lows of each matchup for Stage 2 and give you a quick preview of what to expect at the Lan Finals in Toronto at EGLX. Welcome to the desk. I am your host, Alex Van Silliwin, and along with me it's Rob Flynn and Jesse Cornpop Chick to give you guys all the analysis for the Stage number 2. Gentlemen, welcome. And first off, I just want to start it off with saying how Stage 2 for me seems as though it was kind of like a second life withstand of Zofia style for a lot of these players and the teams that are trying to make it into Stage 2 and basically kind of dethrone Team Canada at this point.
Yeah, I think Stage 2 was much better in terms of competition. There were a lot more teams that had proven themselves to be valid and honestly pretty incredible competitors within the scene. Last year, there were a few teams that were above the rest, but this year it's been an entirely different scene, and it's been impressive to see how many teams have come forth, especially in Stage 2. Stage 1, we had some clear favorites, we had some surprises, but Stage 2, for the most part, man, it was hard to read all the way through, and we had some incredible fireworks in terms of matches all the way through the second stage.
For sure, and I think when we're talking about these teams, we could notably talk about Psychopaths Gaming, Livid. We could also talk about Grizzlies at this point here, Jesse.
Yeah, no, Grizzlies are a roster that we saw do really well last year, right, in the 2018 Canada Nationals. This time around, not as prominent, right? They did fall in their first game that they played on stream, and then in the first stage as well in the qualifiers, they really struggled. So disappointing for them. They did make it 3 maps in their series, but yeah, no, a little bit tough for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, and actually we're going to talk about that. It's going to be the first match we're going to analyze, but before we get to there, let's look at the recap until how we got to this point, looking at the schedule to start things off. So things started off with the registration back in May and June with Stage 1, who seems like forever ago, in July. It was the open qualifiers and then the Stage 1. Then we just finished Stage 2 in September and October, and now top 4 teams are making it to the Grand Finals on October 19th and the 20th in Toronto at EGLX LAN. And now you can see the format of these on Stage 1 and Stage 2. For both of these, it was best out of 3, single elimination for all of these matchups to see who's going to be the top 4 teams. And now we can see what they're playing for. Top 4 that made it, they guaranteed $500 here on the prize pool. And in the first place, they are playing for $10,000, which is a lot of money on the line here.
Yeah, it's a pretty good chunk of change, honestly, for playing, 3 games in the stage to get to LAN, and then 2 games at LAN. I mean,
and online qualifiers.
And the online quals, yes. But, I mean, it's a good amount of money. The national programs are always a good way to stretch out and just get some extra games in, get some extra competition going, and maybe even play with some people that you don't always get to play with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Challenger League and Challenge League qualifier teams anyway for players that get to play with each other that they usually don't get to play with on their regular teams. So it's a good opportunity to be able to just branch out, meet new people, experiment with different competitive rosters. And we saw a lot of teams come through on Stage 2. But we round out with 2. Yes, and Psychopaths will be joining Thread the Needle and Team Canada at LAN. For the most part at LAN, it's been Team Canada on a clean sweep right now. They're 3-0 at LAN. They haven't dropped a map at LAN either, through 3 of them, and we're waiting to see if maybe this year the trend will change. If there's one team that could come up from the rest and actually take at least a map, maybe the whole series off of Team Canada.
Well, you talked about Team Canada not dropping a single map. We're looking at the stage number 2 here. Not many of the teams dropped a map either, with the exception here of Psychopaths Gaming in that first best out of 3 matchup, and that's going to be the first match that we're going to analyze here. And Jesse, what are your thoughts actually with these results that you've seen?
I mean, in terms of the teams that made it out of Stage 2, I don't think that they were the clear favorites 100% of the time, but I think they were teams that you'd expect to make it out of that stage, right? Psychopaths, obviously a very prominent French team, proven that they are probably the best team inside of Quebec. And then Team Yes, I think a team full of veterans that you'd expect to see attending the LAN Finals as well.
All right, well, let's check that out, ladies and gentlemen. Doing the first analysis here of Psychopaths Gaming and the Team Grizzlies. So to start things off here for Psychopaths Gaming versus Grizzlies, there's been a slight roster change there for Skivs dropping and joining Old Men's Club in Stage 2, and Psychopaths Gaming bringing Kozak into the roster. How much did that change here into PKP, Flynn?
Yeah, they obviously opted to make a roster move in the break, so they participated in Stage 1. They had Discount Skies on the roster. They then moved forward and said, you know what, maybe a change needs to happen here, and I don't disagree with the roster move, considering it helped them push themselves all the way into a LAN spot. And we'll see how they perform. They'll have to make another roster move heading into LAN, apparently. They had one guy who's questionable at this point to be able to make it. So for the roster right now, stability, not a strong suit. But their play, of course, was strong enough to push them to EGLX in Toronto on October 19th and 20th. So you can't be too mad about the situation. like you said for the Grizzlies as well, you know, it ends their run very early on. It was the only 2-1, so if you're the Grizzlies, you feel decent about that, but it also kind of would rip you up inside knowing that you're a couple rounds away from maybe making a run all the way to LAN, seeing that your opponent, who, if you had hypothetically beaten, also did the same thing. You're hypothetically better than all the other teams as well. Just a tough first-round matchup, but to be the best, you have to beat the best. They didn't start off well, and that's the end of their 2019 run in the Canadian Nationals.
Yeah, they were tested very, very early, but like you said, they have to win every single game there. When you're looking at this series, though, Jesse, this best out of 3, it was really only Bank that was the closest matchup there that went into overtime all the way 8-7, but the other 2 maps were pretty much one-sided there.
Yeah, I think after the series started, it was kind of surprising how it ended, right, with Grizzlies going so close and actually getting the advantage on Psychopaths on their map pick, and then coming and taking Consulate so dominantly. I think people would probably suspect that Grizzlies would be able to clear the 3rd map too, but hey, sometimes it just wears on you, right? You play a long best of 3. Psychopaths, of course, being in stage 1, maybe had a little bit more experience in terms of these long games, these long nights. So they were able to pull it out on Border and get a 7-3 victory of their own. So I mean, good stuff shown from both squads, no doubt about it. But yeah, I think just a little bit more gas in the tank for Psychopaths.
Overall there, what can you take there for Grizzlies? Because they have a different iteration from the other Canadian Nationals. Can they move forward moving into the future iterations of the Rainbow Six Canadian Nationals?
I mean, it's North America, right? Typically, when you see something like this happen, you're talking about maybe a roster implosion more than keeping it together until next year. Next year is a very long time away.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it seems that some of the things that's happening a lot with these teams are losing to just implode internally. But let's focus now on the second matchup, Coast to Coast versus Supernova. So Supernova at this point, they did make some changes. They did bring in Crusher for Fruiter. They brought in Lackey for Vix, and then they have LSG, Jims, and Nivik going into this one. So on paper, they were looking to win this one, and they did win it quite easily here against Coast to Coast.
Yeah, no, I think Supernovas were the favorites coming in, but I don't want to say that Coast to Coast totally threw things away. I think that they performed fairly well given their opponents. You know, they got 5 rounds on Clubhouse, 3 on Villa. Yeah. Not too surprising, and their players, you know, found good homes afterwards as well. Ken's from Coast to Coast, currently coaching Two-Face in Challenger League, so I think this experience helped them quite a bit, and they're not going to be super upset at the fact that they lost this matchup against such a good team.
Yeah, when you're looking at it at the same time, though, on that first map, the 5 rounds they got on Clubhouse, it was actually picked by Supernova, and at the same time, when you were casting this match here, Jesse, you're also noticing that Maple was playing a Thermite, kind of like a support role to start things up, but he was actually the top fragger for the team. So what was missing there for Coast to Coast? I'm assuming it's some fragging power. Yeah,
definitely. I think as much as we like to hype up support players that can frag out, you see his frags here now from Maple, you don't really want that to be happening. You kind of need guys like Phoenix to pop off, maybe Ken's as well, pick up the gun and do a little bit better work than what they were doing. Unfortunate there, but yeah, I think, again, guys like Ken's finding good homes on Two-Face is really good to see from this roster.
Yeah, for Coast to Coast there, you kind of know this roster a little bit as well, Flynn, from a couple of players that had some experience in Pro League in the first year.
Yeah, so for Coast to Coast, I mean, they haven't played together on any official roster at any point in time, but they did come together just for this. And for Supernova as well, they obviously have a lot of competitive experience, especially with Crusher. LSG's been around for a very long time. So, I mean, very, very different rosters in terms of current skill level, but obviously a lot of experience and some storied history between both teams.
Well, with that, we do have Psychopaths Gaming and Supernova moving up forward from week number 1. So let's now look at the week number 2 matches for the other 2 best out of 3s. And now Livid versus Momentum. Momentum, another one of those teams that Flynn mentioned before that are trying to come into this tournament to get a little bit of experience. And at this point, they do get experience, but they unfortunately get rocked 7-2, 7-2 here on Clubhouse and on Border. But what can you pull out of this, at least for Team Momentum coming into this, Flynn?
Yeah, for Momentum, just an opportunity that we saw last year for a lot of these teams that have now succeeded in the Canadian Nationals. It's an opportunity to dip your toe into the waters and just branch out a little bit and see what your possibilities are for playing competitive Siege. I mean, you don't have to start at the top. There's no way you can even start at the top, really, for Pro League. You got to start lower down and work your way up. And for the Momentum guys, I think this was an opportunity for them to come together, have some fun, compete on a level that they haven't been able to compete on before, and maybe a couple of them stick with it. Maybe a couple of them just go back to playing the game casually. You know, not everyone has to be a competitive player. Not everyone has to be a pro. You know, it's an opportunity for them to just test the water, see how they feel, see how they like it. And obviously playing up against a team like Livid, it's a hard match to go up against, and understandable given the scoreline that they didn't fare too well, but hopefully they enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, they didn't really need to focus a lot on droning and stuff like that too there for Livid. They just went all out fragging, and that's why we see such a heavy scoreline. But Jesse, your thoughts there on this roster, because they have stuck around for a while, and then coming into this stage number 2, they are still the same roster with the exception of maybe Exod subbing in for Alpha Tag for this one.
Yeah, I mean, the roster change obviously didn't seem to hurt Livid too much. I don't know they're going to be super happy like nowadays, but after this matchup, I think it was probably a confidence booster. You sometimes don't know what to expect coming up against a team that is pretty much full of unknowns. So to put them down confidently 7-2, 7-2, I think that's big for Livid.
Awesome. Well, now let's focus on to Old Man Club, and yes, on the other end of the spectrum, the last matchup of this stage number 1 quarterfinals. So it's going to be, yes, a team that we all know so well in the past iterations there of the Canada Nationals and the Canadian Nationals with Jolly, Snug, Rowdy Ali, Cinnamon, and Mizio. And this time, they want to come in and make a big impact, Flynn.
Yeah, I think honestly for Yes, this was a team that just seeing the roster off immediately of us previewing the game, I felt like this was a team that could go very deep. And you've got 2 guys in the roster that have just turned 18 in Mizio and Jolly. So they turned 18 this year, so they have the opportunity to compete in every competition now in Rainbow Six Siege. They aren't limited to just minor leagues like CCS or ESA. So this is an opportunity for them to really demonstrate what they have at a top level, at least in the nation, and I don't know, grow their film reel a little bit more in terms of competitive experience and get some recommendations from a couple of their teammates. This was obviously a hard game for the Old Man Club to start off with, but I mean, Yes had proven themselves time and time again through each of the games they played, and they pushed themselves all the way to a LAN spot for it.
Awesome. And Jesse, at least for Old Man's Club, they're kind of like the leftovers of other organizations and other iterations of the Canada Nationals. Max, Tev, LWS, Don Papo, and Skies. How did they fare here against Yes, as they actually did lose their first map 7-2 on Border, but at least put up a good fight on Villa 8-6.
Yeah, I mean, we only saw this team play 2 maps, and they lost both of the maps, but I don't think they were the worst team in this stage by far. I think that they certainly, if they had gone up against some weaker opponents, they definitely would have had a shot to win some of these matches. Unfortunately, they went up against, well, a LAN team now. In the very first matchup. So they unfortunately did fall, but I thought there was some good competition. And of course, right, being a bit of that ragtag team thrown together at the last moment, they didn't have a ton of time really to prepare for this tournament. So I think with what they were given and the opponents they were up against, their scoreline of especially 6-8 on Villa was very impressive.
Well, at least with that, that means that for week number 1 and 2, we do have Livid that moves forward with Team Yes, but now it's time to see probably the biggest matchup of stage number 2, and that is going to be Supernova versus Psychopaths Gaming in week number 3. But before we get into that, one quick question for you, because Jesse, you did mention before that it was going to be a tight timeline for these guys to actually practice for a Team Old Man Club. So what's a training regimen? How do you practice that? How do you prepare with that short amount of time? What do you want to work on first?
I think you really got to like isolate a few maps that you want to focus on, right? When you don't have a lot of time, you can't really go through every single map on the map pool and create strategies for everything. You're probably going to rely a lot on the default stuff. These are experienced players, some old school guys in there, so it's not like you're going from a completely blank slate. I think you just go over your strategies, you do some dry runs, maybe get some scrims in there if you can, and just hope for the best.
Awesome. Well, now let's check out Psychopaths Gaming here versus Team Supernova, and that is going to be for week number 3. And now to focus here on PKP versus Supernova. I think here, gents, it's a big test for both of these teams. Supernova at this point, they bring Crusher. Now they're up against a valiant, a formidable opponent, and they want to see if they can actually have what it takes to move it into LAN. On the other end of the spectrum, PKP, they lost short in stage number 1. They practiced a lot, they looked back at their drawing board, and now they're up against a good team here for this team of Crusher, Lackey, LSG, Jims, and Nivik. How did that go for this PKP and Supernova for you guys?
It was a weird one for me, honestly. You know, heading in, I thought that Psychopaths, you know, they were in the midst of roster changes, and they really didn't look like they were in top form.
Yep.
Boy, did they surprise, honestly. Supernova had everything going in their favor. They had the better experience. They had their main 5 together. They had, honestly, what looked like the better players on paper. But games aren't played on paper, and we got a harsh lesson in that, and so did Supernova in terms of their performance on game day, and it just did not translate well to the playing field. And hey, that sends Psychopaths to LAN. Not the way we expected it, not the team we expected to be doing it, but that's kind of what happens. It's an upset field here in the Canadian Nationals.
Yeah, and it started off with a big upset because Supernova actually picked Consulate that first map in this best out of 3, and they were actually already losing 3-0 on defense. So how did they do this? How did Psychopaths Gaming do this against them, having a sub with Orion coming in as well?
I mean, it's really tough, right? Supernova, like, I think coming back into this one with the experience of Crusher on their side really helped them out quite a bit. Psychopaths with the roster change again, as you're talking about, like Orion played really, really well in terms of his individual stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe wasn't so in sync with the rest of his teammates.
That's what I want to ask you guys too,
Yeah.
because during the cast, you guys did say that he seemed a little bit disconnected. So what was missing there in terms of that fruition to have a good flow with the team?
I mean, it's just that he wasn't with the team, right? He was
Okay.
on the roam clears, or he was doing his own roam, and like a lot of the time, it was actually working for him. So I don't know that necessarily it was a problem he wasn't with this team, but there were also times where he got caught on an island and he was just down. There's nobody for the trade. So I think that as he gets more coordination, that's definitely something that they'll work on and will get fixed for Lan.
I think at the same time too, when we looked at the pre-games, the coach did mention that, you know, for Psychopath's game to actually move forward, Storms actually had to step up. But on that first map, we didn't see a lot of Storms. It was actually a lot of Orion, but also a lot of Stelio and Bozak. So a lot of teams stepping up there, but what was missing for Supernova at this point?
I think for Supernova, maybe just their confidence, right? I mean, you come into this match, it's a super big one for you. You look back to stage number 1, and they were so close to qualifying for LAN.
Yeah.
And they come into this one, they get so close, and they fall short again. I mean, it really can drain on a player's mental state.
Yeah, Flynn, you're going to add something there to the comment of what was missing for Supernova.
I think just execution, honestly. I mean, this is a team that has practiced plenty of times and put together a lot of hours together. This is a team that competed at DreamHack Montreal. This is a team that tried to make Challenger League. This is a team that is not a pickup team. This is someone. This is a group of people, that have come together to try and form a 5-man roster. And when you have that much pressure put upon you and that many expectations, but also this much experience, there's this air about you that you should be able to execute on game day in a situation when, yes, they may be playing a little more erratic than usual. Yes, there may be circumstances outside your control in terms of what your opponents are doing. But if you can't lock that down and you can't perform as a team, then you probably shouldn't be a team. And it was demonstrated by Psychopaths there. They ripped them apart on really situations that a lot of us expected Supernova to be able to handle.
And when you mentioned that it shouldn't be a team, I think they actually aren't even a team
No,
anymore
they're gone
after
now.
that one. So
They're done.
you talked about teams that imploded. Unfortunately, they're going to be one of the teams that have imploded and are unfortunately gone. And now let's focus into matchup week number 4, and that is going to be Livid versus Yes. And now we talked about big tests, and this time it's a big test for Livid versus Yes. Yes, a team that actually didn't practice that much and didn't prepare for this event here and didn't prepare for this week number 4, but they still ended up winning.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team, like I said, I pegged them to go deep just based on the roster, and that's kind of all they needed. It wasn't some crazy intricate strategy. It was not incredible IGLing skills from one individual. It was how many people can run around the map and gun and take aggressive stances and be successful with it. And that's Yes in a nutshell. For Livid, however, that's a team, again, where I expected, some pushback. It was close, I guess, but honestly for Livid, just too many rounds lost early. There were too many instances in which Yes is just stacking round after round after round. He couldn't stop the bleeding. He kept letting them pick up momentum, and if you're going to allow that to happen against you, I mean, you're always playing from your back foot at that point. All the opening picks coming out from Yes as well, putting Livid at a disadvantage so early on. It was like they were always climbing uphill and they could never get moving on their own momentum.
Yeah, you mentioned that, because 7-4, 7-5, it does sound close on paper, but when you're looking at the match, they're already falling behind from a lot on that first half. And I think when we're looking at it, Jesse, more focus onto Border. When they're playing on the defensive side, they never really focus on defense of Vent Workshop. So what was the strategy there for Livid?
I don't know. This is a team that on defense we saw pull out a lot of weird strategies. Both maps we saw that, ignoring Ventilation Workshop over on Border, and then ignoring the basement site as well on Bank quite often and doing silly repels like that through Skylight. So yeah, maybe a change of pace for Livid between Yes and their previous opponent. Momentum definitely much stronger. I think if we see like second half Livid Gaming show up in the first half for both maps, right? It gets a lot closer, and they probably take a map or two. They could even win the series. But I think it took them a long time to get into each map, and then, as Flynn was talking about, Yes just had such a lead that it was tough for Livid to really come back from that point.
When you're looking at this matchup here on Bank, when we're looking at these frags, it seems as though Yes had a lot to play with against Livid. Like, you saw many situations that were at a flank, set up rotations where they could actually take him before even entering a site. So what happened there for Livid Gaming on defensive side?
Honestly, it comes down to your ability to repel an entry. Whoever's taking that first engagement, if they're not having a good day, swap them out with someone else.
Yeah.
Get someone who can hit their shots to stop the entry. We saw it a lot, especially on Bank in those latter rounds when Livid had to stack rounds just to stay in the game. They were at a 6-2 deficit, and they ran it back to 6-5. a lot of those rounds, the reason they had so much success is because Jolly was dead in the first 10 seconds of all of those rounds.
Yeah.
They had someone this time around go for those aggressive picks onto Jolly, repel the entry. They had a lot more success with it, and if you have someone who can do that, it completely changes the tone of the game.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for your analysis of week number 4, but now it's time to focus on the top 5 plays of stage number 2, so please take it away.
You know, Van Silly, we had a lot of great clips in stage 2 here, but we managed to narrow it down to the top 5. First up, we got Exotic up against Momentum, and there are a couple good clips up against Momentum. Livid Gaming, of course, really brought it to him there. That was a beautiful flick from Mustache. Then here 3, of course, this is a nice run-up from Storms, you'll see too. Jumps out, gets an easy 2K. Beautiful stuff.
And the last 2, a little bit longer clips, but it was Bozak, the penultimate push in through dirt to push them over the edge and draw things up against Supernova. He was an individual superstar in this map on Clubhouse. And of course, what top 5 wouldn't be complete without a best clip of them all? And unfortunately for Supernova, this is the furthest or the most, I guess, special prize they will get. It was LSG for Supernova against Coast to Coast on Villa. Picks up a whopping 3 kills there downstairs on a solo hold inside of Laundry. And like I said, unfortunately for them, Supernova don't make it to LAN. They don't advance further on into the Canadian Nationals. But LSG can at least say he had the best play of Stage 2.
And just like that, 4 weeks in stage number 2 is now over. That's sad. I'm not seeing you guys for a bit.
No?
Aww.
But at least, let's recap it all with what's your best impressions of stage 2.
Like I said earlier, Stage 2 has been probably the most fascinating segment of the Canadian Nationals I've done ever since its inception. And honestly, the competition... It is. The competition's just gotten so much better. The teams have gotten so much better. It seems like teams are willing to stick together a lot longer, and there's more actual teams compared to last year, where it was a lot of pickup teams. There are obviously a couple pickup teams, and 2 of them will be at LAN. But at the end of the day, it's a much more improved scene, and you can see how the Canadian Nationals just on its own has helped foster some of that competitive spirit inside of Canada for Siege. It just brings out more competition. It gives people more entries to play and more opportunity to branch out and just kind of test out comp in general.
What sticks out for you there, Jesse, for stage 2?
I think for me, like, we saw a lot from the Quebec scene coming out. Obviously, they get a little isolated in the Siege community, and so this is sort of like their big competition where they can really shine, and I think we saw a lot of good plays coming out from them. Some new rosters that we didn't see last year. Some rosters have reshuffled quite a bit, and we saw some really fun stuff coming out from them. And then, like, some English teams, again, some mixed teams coming out there with some really old-school veterans coming back into the scene. I love seeing them come back, right? Some really old Pro League guys coming back in, and, you know, people from all over the place. So, yeah, for me, it was a huge mixed bag in terms of stage number 2, and, man, I loved every bit of it.
For sure, and now it's time to focus on the Lan Finals, because we have 4 teams that actually are moving forward. We have Team Canada, we have Thread the Needle, we have Yes, and now we also have Psychopaths Gaming. So I think we do have the brackets of what's going on first. So it's going to be Team Canada versus Thread the Needle. So your impressions on that?
I mean, I haven't seen Thread the Needle play in a long time, ever since stage 1, so I don't know what's going on in their camp. But if you're Team Canada right now, you're lining them up and sizing them up for measure and trying to see what weaknesses you can exploit. It's Team Canada.
It's a tough one. It's
Team Canada. They're going for the 4-peat. They want it all. They wanted every trophy in 2018. They want the trophy here in 2019. I don't see anyone really that could take it away from them. Maybe Yes on the other side of the bracket. They've been kind of my dark horse throughout this entire stage ever since seeing that roster. But I don't know. Thread the Needle has a lot of work to do, and they're going to have to show up on game day to be able to beat Team Canada.
Your thoughts, Jesse, on Psychopaths Gaming versus Yes? Because Psychopaths Gaming, you seem to be on the positive end of their support throughout this whole stage 2 and now the finals.
Yeah, Psychopaths throughout stage both 1 and 2 have had a really exciting journey. You know, so a lot of ups, a lot of downs. Played some really tough teams in stage number 1. Stage number 2, no difference, but this time they were able to close it out, get that spot. The only representatives of the Quebec scene as well, who will be in Toronto at EGLX, so they should put on a great show. Yes, as well. Ton of veterans that we like to see coming out from some of the other squads. Bit more of a mixed team, right? So probably not going to be taking it as structurally as perhaps Psychopaths will be, but I think that's going to be a close game. You said that Yes, probably going to challenge Team Canada. I'd give it to Psychopaths myself, but I really don't know. That's going to be a really close match.
So then it's going to be a Team Canada versus Psychopaths / Yes, because we all think that Thread the Needle is not going to make it at this point.
I thought that through all of stage 1, and Thread the Needle always proved me wrong too.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I don't know, but yeah, that would be my initial prediction.
Well, I think honestly, if they were just against a different team, maybe it would be a different story. But going up against Team Canada, I mean, that's a tough draw.
Hey man, Yeah, they have to face them eventually, right? But all the action can actually be caught live in Toronto at EGLX on October 19th and the 20th. You guys can find all the information at r6canadanationals.com for tickets, for information. Action is on Saturday. Action is on Sunday. Friday, it's also open for you guys to check out the venue and have some fun. But until then, on behalf of the Waveform crew and everybody else at the desk, we wish you all a good night, and we'll see you in Toronto.